Good morning, and thank you for joining yet another Ironside Take 30. This week's Take 30 is very exciting. We are going to follow up on the session we had a few weeks back, where Rachel from IBM took us through at a high level the new features in Cognos Analytics 11.1.7. This week, Bob O'Donnell from our team is going to take a deeper dive into the functionality that you all said you wanted to know more about as part of survey responses that we collected last time. In terms of the agenda, we'll talk quickly about 11.1.7, walk through those new features and capabilities, do a demonstration of those so you can see those, and certainly as we go through, ask questions, right? We're happy to offer you, happy to answer your questions as we go through. All right, so just a reminder of our future Take 30 sessions. So in the future, we've got best practices on Snowflake. Next Thursday, Thursday after that, we're going to focus on Amazon QuickSight and some new features there and some enterprise capabilities that have come into that tool. And then after that, integrating Amazon Web Services SageMaker with QuickSight. And then finally, we still have our Take 30 one-on-ones. So if you'd like to talk to us one-on-one, feel free to jump into that part of our website and register for some time. Okay, so myself, I'm Scott Masage. I'm the practice director for BI at Ironside. Been here for just over eight years now. Bob O'Donnell is a very senior member of my team, and I'll let Bob introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I've been with Ironside just a handful of days over 3 years. Before that, I worked for IBM and Cognos originally in the pre-sales role. So I'm happy to be here working as a consultant primarily on Cognos stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. Cognos Analytics 11.1.7 was released around the end of July. I think it was the 30th. So it's been out for about a month and a half now. It is considered a long-term support release, or LTS. Basically, that means there will not be 11.1.8. Whether it's going to be an 11.2 or 12, who knows yet, but my money would be on 11.2, but this is the last update to the 11.1 cycle. There will be a number of fix packs, and we're actually going to talk about one of those coming up as part of this presentation. There are many new and updated features. They've got a new set of APIs for developers, a server-side REST and a client-side JavaScript API is available, and it's built off of the ability to change some of the newer content, so dashboards and things like that. I'm sure that's going to grow as new releases come out in the future for the next stream of the product. There were a number of data set improvements as well. So you've got kind of like a query explorer view now, more like the reporting environment. So what that gives you the ability to do is to create a more complex data set from potentially queries from other reports, because you can actually copy and paste those in and do joins and unions and such. So they've expanded the capability there, and of course they've made it more faster and more efficient for those as well. As a report developer, you have the ability to disable the on-demand toolbar when they're in Report Viewer. So if you want to simplify the reporting environment for your end user, you can do that as well. One of the nice little features they've added, which I believe was available back in the day, but didn't make it through, was report developers can run a single page and test as opposed to running the whole report, which is a nice capability for the report developers that have multiple page reports. Obviously, Cognos Analytics for mobile app, if you were on the last presentation, there's a lot of talk about that, and there's a lot coming up for that as well. But that is out there, and they've redesigned the scheduling interface. So those are some of the broader things that came out with 11.1.7, but we're going to focus a little bit more on some of the dashboard stuff. So schematics are now available in dashboards. They're not just available in the reporting environment. So if you have an SVG file that you want to upload and add to your visualization pool, you can do that. You can create and save your own custom dashboard templates, which is nice. So if you define a set of templates for people to start with dashboards, you can do that and save those out. You can export individual visualization data to a CSV file. You can create and use module filters. We're actually going to show a quick demo of that, how to build those and how to use those. They have added some accessibility features, so skip to content. So it's basically some shortcut keys that allow end users to bypass the application toolbar and the navigation pane with the shortcut keys to get right to the dashboard content, which is nice. A responsive property option on the visualizations. So this allows the tool to determine as screen sizes change to hide and show content as part of the visualization. Generally, they're considering it non-data items. So if you have a visualization that shows a pie or a bar or a column, that's obviously the core component that they want to show. Everything else is secondary. So what the responsive property does is it will hide or show things like the legends and such as you lose real estate if you're going to a smaller screen or resizing your browser. And they've got a new title option. So you had the ability to do a custom title, obviously, or none at all. Now they have a smart option, which is the default, and it basically uses the metadata of the objects chosen by the developer to create or craft a more meaningful title for the visualization. It's depending on what you've selected, how many fields you've got added to that, it could be very, very useful, or it could be just a starting point to hone in that title. So some of the things more focused on specifically the visualizations themselves. So they've improved the category access label options. A lot of things we're going to see, a lot of these we're going to see quick presentation of, and just to show you what they look like. They've added the logarithmic scale for the visualization. Some of these are just ported from the reporting environment, and some of them were added to the dashboard and reporting environment at the same time. They've also given more control to the report developer over value access options. They've expanded the labeling capabilities for pie charts, and we're going to take a look at that as well. There's a little bit of a glitch in that, going back to one of the things I mentioned before about fixed pack coming up. I'll talk about that later. If a large legend is displayed on a visualization with too many values, it will now show a little ellipsis at the bottom to let the user know that there are more values there. They've added subcategories to the waterfall visualization, and we'll take a look at that. The tree map now supports multiple different display options. So we're actually going to see a visualization, side-by-side visualization of all four of those options. They've done some drop zone enhancements. So they've made it a little bit easier for report builders, report developers to be able to craft the visualization by dragging content onto the visualization itself, or the properties pane, or it's actually the fields pane now, and then there's some search capabilities in there as well. And they've also added bullet visualization range coloring. So based on data elements, you can show target, actual, and then mid, and max value colors. So, all right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some demo material here. So in Cognos, I'm going to start off with my demo dashboard. And so this right now is the waterfall chart with the subcategory built into it. This is based off of a very simple setup of quarters and years. Now this looks a bit strange, and there's a reason behind that. So the current version of the waterfall subcategories does not respect your navigation path or any hierarchy. So in this case, I have two fields. One is the year key, which is just simply the 4-digit year, and one is the quarter key, and that's the 4-digit year plus 1, 2, 3, or 4 for the quarter. Now, the way it is defined, because it does not reflect the navigation path of the hierarchy, and you really can't filter this out, it basically shows all of the quarters for all of the years. So that's why you'll see here in the left-hand corner, you've got the first 4 quarters for 2015. For this second section, you've got it for 2016, and there's a lot of gap in here. Again, like I said, you can't really filter around this, but there's actually a pretty easy way to fix this. So I'm going to go ahead and move that around, and let me just take care of this for a second. And so I'm going to get this in edit mode. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my waterfall chart, and I'm going to drag this in to the pane here. So I mentioned about the changes in the drop zone. So you see that the actual visualization you see on the screen here is a little bit different. And you'll see that the visualization properties or fields now over here in this tab have changed as well. So what I can do is if I come in here and I go into my call center fact, I'm just going to drag all context and I'm going to drag it on to the y-axis. So that's the only required value to create this visualization. So it actually shows that. What I can do now though is if I go into my time dimension, I'm going to grab my year key. And I notice that if I drag over the top of the visualization, the drop zones actually reappear, which is a really nice feature. It's just the main values, so X and Y axis, the subcategories don't show up, but I can drop that on here and I can start to show my year values as well, and that should build that visualization out for me based off of those two values. Now over here on the right hand side, you'll see I have the subcategories option. So if I click in here, it actually has a drop down, which is a nice feature. And I can actually start to type in and it will show me the values that match based on the metadata, what I've selected. So I can go ahead and select, instead of quarter key, I'm going to select quarter, which is just basically Q1 through Q4. So as this expands out, I'm going to go into my properties here and I'm going to change this to fill out the screen by using the X and Y. Oh, sorry, I didn't take that one there. And I'm just going to build this out so it takes up all of the space. And I'll just drag this one here. So now what you see is a much more defined waterfall where I've got Q1 through Q4 for each of the years. And all of these values represent the values for those time frames. So the idea here is I can take in that waterfall chart, I can build out multiple different dimensionality values that may not necessarily have any hierarchical importance with each other, but it gives me the ability to build those out very simply, and it respects the values and filters that out. So hierarchy not so good, but pulling in multiple different values for those will work quite nicely. All right. So that's the waterfall and a little bit about the drop zones. I like the way the drop zones work. It makes it a little bit easier for report developers. So that was a good add. Let me go ahead and move on to the what's new dashboard in 11.1.7. So very first thing, schematics, and I mentioned this before. So they've opened up the capability of a schematic from the reporting environment into the actual dashboard environment. If I go into my visualizations here, you see the system visualizations. I also have custom visualizations. So we have a couple of test objects here, and then there's this 737-900 seat chart. This was an SFG file that I found online, simply downloaded it and made some modifications to it. And that was just a little bit of a metadata file that goes along with it. And it's now available in Cognos dashboard capability. So that was a nice add that they've brought that across. We're going to walk through all of these one at a time. So I have category access. So you'll see that they've changed. Oh, right, there we go. Scroll over, my guys. So the axis properties have been added to the axis properties item axis label orientation. So if I go and select any one of these, I can go into axis properties and slide down to item axis label orientation. I have horizontal, vertical, rotate, and stagger. So you'll see those four here. So the horizontal is the default, what you used to be able to see. They've added vertical. Rotate is at a 45-degree angle, and then the stagger down here on the lower right-hand side has been added as well. So nice capability to give the report developer, dashboard developer a little bit extra capability there. The value axis changes. So I have the ability to, and again, for some reason I have to scroll over these to get these to load. No zero origin, so that's in the chart properties. So I can basically say, don't show the zero value. That's something that was in reporting as well. I can change the tick interval, and again, chart properties and the value axis tick interval is the property. In this case, it's not unlike reporting. It's not like I want to show 1 or 2 or 5 values. It actually requests a value. So in this case, I use 40. So I'll only see the values for 40, and then the top and bottom that are there. And I can also define min and max values. So in this case, I did 50 and 100. So I get the fidelity of all of the bars here, but I don't have to see the first half of that. So those were added in there as well. And we've got, this is where you find all of these properties. So pie and donut labels, and we'll scroll that out. So this is a nice feature that they've added. So if I select the pie and I go into chart properties, there are a number of properties here that help me define what I'm going to be looking at. So if I look at this, I can say display percentage or the actual value, and you see that the pie changes there. I can item label format can be changed, so I can just do the item. I can do the value, or as I had before, I can do both. And then the label location, so I can do center horizontally, which is laid out. Now, one of the things we've noticed is the call out in Google, in Chrome and Chrome and Edge, the values don't appear here. It works perfectly in Internet Explorer, which is kind of strange. But for the call out on the outside, there needs to be a fix pack for that. So just to be forewarned, but the center works out perfectly. So those look good there. So tree map, this is another one. Let me just scroll over these. I think it probably has to do with the presentation mode. So again, chart properties, if I select one of these, go into chart and properties. If I scroll down, I have the 4 options here. So squarify, slice, dice, and then slice and dice. So these two are not really usable in a smaller form, but I think in a larger form, they'd be much better. But for the larger form, squarify and slice and dice give you a nice block look at what the values are, and of course the color associated with those as well. So conditional crosstab. This is a nice feature. So if you look at the crosstab now, you can actually add conditional colors based on the values, and you got to add little emojis and icons. So if I look at the color properties, and you see I have conditional color here, the available data. So if I have a number of different measures, I can look at those. If I go ahead and select those, I just have 2 simple rules here. I can add more, basically add another rule. And you'll notice there's an and option here as well. So I can create a number of if statements, basically, or rules combined together to determine what I'm going to see in those values. And there's up arrows and down arrows and smiley faces and negative faces and a few other options that you can show as part of that as well. And finally, bullet chart color. I'll scroll over here, and for some reason, let me back out of that. Oh, there we go. So within the bullet chart now, I have the ability to bring in data values and colors based off of the min, mid, and max, and then the actual and the target. So if I go into, I'll go ahead and select the visualization. current color palette, and then the color properties. So you see here I have the bar color, the target color, min, middle, and max. The only issue I've seen with this so far, and hopefully this will be fixed in the future, the minimum, middle, and maximum range colors are not part of the palette that I've selected. So if I create a palette for the bar and target colors, those values, that color range, or that color palette is not available to me for the minimum, middle, and max. But there's still a pretty good set of colors here that gives you the idea for the background. So in this case, I've got broken out for my call center information Monday through Friday, and I've got my value across all of these. So that's laid out for those there. So that's a number of the capabilities added. Now, one more thing I'd like to demo, and if I go back into my demo dashboard real quick. Come on, there we go. So one of the nice features that they've added is for what they're calling a module filters. So a module filter is something that I can actually add to the metadata as part of the dashboard and use it across any number of different visualizations or tabs. So how to do that? Very simply, if I go into my weekday dim here, I'm going to go ahead and select filter, and I get a dialog here. So I'm going to call this just simply midweek. And I'm going to create a calculation based off of this to say that the weekday ID, drag that in, is in, and I'm going to use the actual key value. So it's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So those are the key values for those three. And go ahead and click OK. So you'll see here now I've got this little filter applied to that's available for me in my metadata. I can create any number of these, and based on the calculation values that I can do, they can be pretty complex objects. So now using these are fairly straightforward as well. So I can just basically drag this, and you see the icon will change. So once it's over the visualization, I can actually drop it. I can drag it on to filter all of my tabs. I can drag it and drop it on to filter just this tab. And I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. And I'm going to go back to fields. And you see local filters down here. So if I now drag that over to the local filter, you'll see the icon change where I can actually drop that there. So that's now filtering, going to filter this visualization based on something that I've created in the data module here on the left-hand pane and made available to the visualization. So once I've created that, I can drag and drop that on any number of visualizations. I don't have to replicate it over and over and over again. So I think that's another nice feature that they've made things a little bit simpler for the report or dashboard developers in Cognos Analytics. So that's a quick rundown of a number of the new capabilities for dashboarding in Cognos 11.1.7. Again, this is the last version of the 11.1 series. So we're going to see something either 11.2 or a 12 coming up in the near future. So any questions?
Okay, so let me, so we're looking at some of the questions here. So we've got one question. Are module filters stored with the data source data module, or are they stored with the dashboard?
Ooh, excellent question. So from my findings, they are not stored with the data source. You know, in this case, it was a data module. Your dashboard data source can be an FM package, a data module, uploaded files, any data sets, and then basically any combination of all of those. So that module filter is actually stored with the metadata specifically for that visualization. It's funny, when I first thought about that, I'm thinking, well, maybe that's maybe that's an oversight. But the more I thought about it, the dashboard developer may not have access to update or edit the data module or whatever the data source is. And I think purely for governance, it's probably a good idea to not allow that to happen. So the answer is they are just stored with the dashboard. So it's not something that you can push out to other people, but I think it is a nice time-saving feature for those that are building the dashboards.
Okay, one other question, and this one is about data sets. So I'm not sure we necessarily cover data sets, but you know, what are there now or in the future, or do we expect it to be in the roadmap, an ability to incrementally refresh data sets?
Ooh, that's a good question. We'd have to check with our friends at IBM on that one. My guess is I would say no. But if it's something, you know, that's one of those enhancement requests, I guess you have to go through. Because it's actually running a query and refreshing the source, the data set source, I would guess not. But that the question makes sense because of the fact that you can append an uploaded file now. So the trigger is there. We'll just have to wait to see if that gets added to the product at some point in the future. But good question.
Okay. All right, great. So those are our questions for now. So unless there are any additional questions that people wish to ask, we'll give a second for that. All right. Yeah, so Bob, if you want to go through this last slide here.
Yeah, so really quick, there's an excellent resource online for Cognos Analytics 11 and 11.1, and ultimately whatever the next release is going to be, that goes through each release and gives you all of the new and changed features. And it breaks it out by, you know, if it's dashboarding, if it's stories, if it's reporting, if it's install and configuration. There's a number of different options there. And that is one of the very first things that IBM updates when they release a new product. So that's a very valuable subset of information out there that you can look into. So sometimes you'll see demos for that as well. So links to some of the YouTube demos that they've created. And then the information on the long-term support release. So basically a little bit more information on how that's going to work, how long it's available for. They did that exact same thing with 11.0.13, and they continue to support that release and will into for the foreseeable future. So there's considered no new enhancements, but they will be supporting that release and they will be updating it with fix packs as issues are found. So there's some more information out there for that as well. So that's it.
All right. Great. Thank you very much, Bob. And thanks all for joining, and look forward to having you on our next Take 30. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.